So, I had a big decision to make. It wasn't about what I should be telling anyone anymore. It wasn't about work. It wasn't about how I should portray myself. It was literally life or death.
Oh, that's a good one.
Different culture, different ideologies.
Mental health is really important.
Be like I was in my 30s and I had exuberant energy.
Definitely be more introspective and be brave in looking.
Because I was so consumed by my own suffering and being an alcoholic, in my opinion.
Hi everyone, John back again for another Strong, Happy, Healthy Love podcast, the channel where we're talking about people's mental health journey, the trials and tribulations that have shaped their experiences. And I'm very honored and privileged today to be joined by an incredible woman, Shaunace West, who from her earliest age was a high achiever, high performer. Everything needed to be at the highest level. And that was pretty much working for her until she hit the stumbling block at 27 and had some incredible health challenges that thankfully she's overcome those. And that set her on a whole new path of setting up a new company for herself, which we're going to get into as well. But let's just start where we start. Shaunace, thank you so much. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased to be here and so excited to, share everything that needs to be shared.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, we started talking. I think we were doing 15 minutes. We thought we better record something. Otherwise, it'll be a wasted opportunity. So I want to cast your mind back to those formative years and from the earliest experience you kind of your parenting and the psychological experiences, whether you had any challenges with mental health and sort of taking us through to those challenges in later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said before, I was a high achiever from a very early age. And I think that it partially came from being firstborn and having the responsibilities. I was the oldest. And yeah, I was a do-gooder. I was always making sure that I was following the instructions. I was always going to be praised for that. I had two younger brothers who the youngest brother was a handful from the start. And so, therefore, if I took care of that handful at any time, my parents would praise me for having that space, giving them the space because they were always constantly on. My dad worked away a lot. He was a crayfishman, so he worked every single day for 7 months. And often worked away for weeks at a time. And then in the off season, he would be home for 4 months and we'd have him there. But it was always, um, yeah, it was mostly just mum growing up. And so her with three little kids, one that was mostly a handful, meant that if I did anything to help her out, I would just have this immense amount of praise. So I learned from a very, very young age that nurturing, giving, supporting all meant love. Praise was love. And if I gave, nurture, supported in any way, then I would receive that love.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we move into my parents raised me to be a very capable person because I was always being told, that independent young woman kind of vibes. They would constantly tell me they were proud of me, constantly tell me that they loved me. And this always was, I would achieve whatever I could, and they would just to get that praise, I guess. So I would do the piano lessons to then recite in my assessments, and it didn't even matter if I came first or second or third. They were proud of me no matter what, but I needed to do the best that I possibly could so that I was deserving of that praise. Then that moves into the same thing in high school. I wasn't the smartest person in the room, but I tried so hard to be the best that I could be even then. And I think the intention was not right from the start. The intention wasn't to be the best that I can be for me. it was for my parents. It was always for my parents, and it was always for praise and for them to be proud of me so that therefore I get that constant feedback of being loved. And that was to the point where every night I was so regimented in high school to do my studies so that I would get into uni because no one in my family had been to uni yet. And so I was determined, like I knew how proud my parents would be if I got into uni. And so I studied every single night and I barely passed my exams, even with all of the extra study that I did. And so when I got that letter that said whether or not I was going to be accepted into uni, I couldn't open it. I actually ended up melting down and just my mum was so giddy with excitement, handing it to me, going, open it, open it. And I was like, no, I can't. I can't open it. You open it. She's like, no, this is yours to open. And I just didn't want to open it because what if I didn't succeed? What if I didn't get in? That I couldn't even contemplate what that world would look like. Luckily, I didn't need to worry because I'd got in. And as with everything else that I did, like I was a water polo player and I would always get best on ground. I was a swimmer in high school and always won champion girl every year. Like there was always ways all the way along that showed how hard I worked to get to those places. I was never the best swimmer, but I worked so hard to become the best swimmer. I trained every other day. And yeah, it eventually brought me to, I finished uni. And again, I tried all through uni to get my best scores, and all of my scores were high distinctions, credits, all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't because I was smart. It wasn't because I was academic. It was just because I tried goddamn hard. And eventually I graduated, and that graduation, I remember throwing up my cap like everyone does on TV, and the fireworks happened, and it was just so, so incredible. Over the next year, I worked 5 different jobs to try and put together. At that time, they had a job freeze. I became an occupational therapist and they had a job freeze. So there was really, really few jobs. So I had 5 one-day-a-week jobs to try and make up a full-time job. And I ended up I was working so much, I had 2 days off a fortnight. Actually, even after I finished school, between school and uni, I was working 3 jobs just to go to um, Europe because my dad went to Europe when he finished his school and he went on a Kentucky tour. So I had to do the same thing. So I worked 3 jobs to make enough money to take me on a 3-month trip in Europe doing a Kentucky tour as a part of that. So, and of course, he was proud of me. We got the exact same photo with the exact same group in the exact same place in Florence, and side by side, we can see he was 18 or whatnot. I was 18. We're both in the same group. It's very cool. My brothers actually also did the same. Um, but yes, then I finally got an OT job that I loved, a pediatric occupational therapist job. And I thrived in as an occupational therapist. I thrived as a working with children. But of course, being the high achiever I was, I needed to become a senior occupational therapist. Just being an occupational therapist wasn't enough. And so I needed to become a senior. And so that every year I would write my boss a letter saying, make me a senior, in better words than that, of course. And at that time, it usually took about 10 years to become a senior, and usually it was only men that became seniors because women often didn't make it to that 10-year mark because they were off having babies and they would come back after the fact. And so I became a senior after 3 years. 3 years out of uni, which actually blows my mind even now to think of that. It's a bit easier to get in that position now that they don't have the job freeze and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, I became a senior after 3 years. I took on my own team. I had a team, I think of 9 at one stage, plus also having my own KPIs. where I still achieved higher KPIs than anyone in my own team, which was not good for them because I was setting them up for failure, really. But that's looking back on it. At the time, I was very much in imposter syndrome, very much trying to prove that I was supposed to be in the position that I was. Um, so yeah, then that brings me to age 27. And that's when everything was going great. I was newly engaged. We just bought a house, was planning a wedding. And that's when I found a lump in my chest, a lump in my breast. And I went to the doctors. The doctors dismissed me, saying it was just fibrous breast tissue. And so I went on my merry way, and that lump continued to grow and it started to become painful. And at the time, on top of my full-time job, I was also um, I was also training with the local circus school. I was an aerialist, and so I was performing as a aerialist silk performer. I was also training and teaching there, and I was teaching disadvantaged kids. And I was a kickboxer, an advanced pole dancer, and I think there's a few other bits and pieces that I don't remember at the time, but essentially I was jam-packed and I was known with my friends as it doesn't matter how much I put on my plate, I still have time for everyone. So it didn't matter how busy my schedule was, I was still making time for everyone. And looking back on it, I was very much everything about what I did was giving. Everything was I was giving 100% of the time as an occupational therapist. I was teaching disadvantaged kids in the circus school. I was giving all of my time to all of my friends. Everything was giving. And so that's yeah, back to the lump in my breast that kept on growing. And so while I was training in the circus school, I found when I was doing my warm-ups and I was maybe doing tumbles or things like that, and I would press my chest into the mat, it would hurt and I would have to stop. I thought this shouldn't be happening. So I kept on going back to the doctors and pushing for tests. We got an ultrasound done. Nothing came up into the ultrasound. Actually, I think in hindsight, it was inexperience that didn't bring that up because they couldn't even find the lump, whereas the lump was palpable. You could feel it. And so again, we left it and I came back to the doctors months later. They said, um, you know, the previous scans haven't shown anything. I said there must be another way to see what this is because it's growing and it's painful. And so they said, we'll do an FNA, which is a fine needle aspiration, where they just like inject a needle into the sac or the lump, whatever it is, and take some cells out and they test the cells. And so we did that. At this stage, it was before Christmas. So the first time I went in was February. Now it's just before Christmas. And we did the fine needle aspiration. I met the doctor for the results just before, it was like a week before Christmas at this stage. And he said, the results are inconclusive. There's no signs of malignancy. So let's just go enjoy your Christmas and we'll just go from there. And I said, no, I don't want inconsistency. I need consistency. Like, give me something that's going to tell me what this is so I can actually relax. And he said, all right, we'll organize a core biopsy. So instead of taking cells, they take a big chunk and they test that instead. But we booked it in for the following February instead so that we could just go have Christmas, relax, and then come back next year. There's nothing to worry about. So comes to a February, so it's a full year now, and we get the core biopsy. Would never, ever, ever recommend anyone to do this. From what I know now, core biopsy is not the way to test this, and it's very, very invasive. But that's the path that I took at the time. And they told me that they would call me in a week to let me know what the results were, and they ended up calling me 3 days later. That was already a bad sign. So they told me come in, they can't tell me over the phone. I had some random doctor that you just pay whoever's available She had no idea, no idea what I was coming in for. She sat there in the chair saying, "Okay, so what are you here for?" I'm like, "I'm here for results." And she looked on her computer and her face just dropped and her face went, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And she handed over the tissues and said, "It's breast cancer." And so I was numb. I was in denial. I didn't really know what to think or do. I was just like, okay, so what do we do? What do we do? And she literally Googled on the spot breast cancer surgeon, and just gave me the details to the first one that pops up. Luckily, he was the best in Australia or best in WA because he was the first one that came up. And so 2 weeks later, I was getting wheeled into operating. I was getting wheeled into the operating theatre and was having a double mastectomy. So, how does this all fit with who I believe I am and my identity and the high achieving self? Well, it didn't. Long story short, it did not. I felt I was this strong, independent woman in every way that was possible. Like, I was strong emotionally, I was strong mentally, I was strong physically. I could climb 6 meters in the air and do flips. Like, I was literally physically strong. But cancer shows weakness. So clearly, this was not a part of the plan, and I didn't want anyone to know. So I had to tell, of course, my boss knew because I was taking time off for the recovery, but no one else knew. My family knew, but I didn't really tell anyone outside of a few close friends. And I didn't want to. And most people had no idea, and they were all invited to the wedding that was, planned for 4 months later. Meanwhile, I'm in hospital trying to recover from this double mastectomy, and I chose to have a reconstruction at the same time, which is the most longest recovery you can imagine. If I had just a mastectomy, the recovery could have been like a couple of months, but given I chose to have a reconstruction at the same time, which means I'm reconstructing the muscles in my pec, in my chest, everywhere, the recovery process was more 1 to 2 years. So I was looking at a long recovery. That didn't stop me from going back to work 4 weeks later, which blows my mind now because I couldn't even open the car door without backing into it and opening it from behind because my muscles had all changed and were put in different positions. So I couldn't actually use them the way they should be used. But I still went back to work and everything carried on as per normal. I decided to go ahead with the wedding, plan the honeymoon. We had an amazing honeymoon. We went to Mexico and Guatemala and Miami and Colombia and LA. It was incredible. And it was all 2 months before COVID hit. So we planned that perfectly. And yeah, so I decided the wedding was on. I had to have a second surgery to complete the reconstruction, but I decided to put that off until after the wedding. And in the meantime, I couldn't do the circus skills. I couldn't do kickboxing, rock climbing, aerial silks. I couldn't do the advanced pole dancing. But the one thing I could do was yoga. So I did yoga, but of course, the high achiever in me couldn't just do yoga. I had to become the yoga teacher. So, in addition to having a new mortgage, a new car, a new husband, planning a wedding, planning a honeymoon, I also did a 12-month yoga teaching degree. Oh, yoga teaching certification, whatever it's called. And so a year later, COVID had hit. I just had my second surgery the same month COVID hit. So we were trying to do all of the hospital stuff with masks, with not like my husband wasn't allowed to come with me. I had was also now teaching yoga on Sundays. So I was working Monday to Friday and then teaching yoga on Sundays. So I had one day off a week. And I had this pain in my chest. It felt like my bone was bruised, which was a weird feeling. Like I know what it feels like for a muscle to be bruised, but for a bone to be bruised, it was a real, like I could press on it and it felt bruised. And as time went on, this pain started radiating through my left chest and into my shoulder. And I thought maybe this is just something to do with the second surgery. Um, and so I started seeing a physio, and the physio was like, yep, that sounds right. All your muscles have moved, like all these different things. That must be what it is. So I started working with her and I'm doing all of these exercises and months are going past and it's not getting better and it's actually getting worse. And the physio is saying, well, even if you didn't see me, it should be getting better. So I went back to my surgeon and told him about this pain. And he said, look, it's probably just the surgery, but let's go get it checked just in case. And it turns out that it was cancer. And the pain was the cancer growing inside my sternum, inside my bone. And it had actually fractured my bones because it had grown bigger than what the bones had allowed. So this pain was the fractured bones in my chest. Now, this is where I actually fell down. This is the first time I actually stopped and thought maybe this is not just a blip anymore. The first time, it was operable, we could take it out and I could go back to normal like nothing had happened. But now this was inoperable. And now it was stage 4. It had actually skipped all the other stages. Because stage 1 and 2 generally it's isolated into the original organ or body part. Stage 2, it's gone to your lymph nodes and or no, maybe stage no, so stage 2, it's still in the same place, but it's bigger than 2 centimeters. Stage 3, it's gone to the lymph nodes. Stage 4, it's gone to another organ, bone, or blood. So we had gone from in the located just in the breast to now it's in the bones. So I had a big decision to make. It wasn't about what I should be telling anyone anymore. It wasn't about work. It wasn't about how I should portray myself. It was literally life or death. So at this stage now, if I followed all of the treatment plans that the doctors give me, I would have a 20% chance of surviving 5 years. And that's if I followed everything that they told me to do. So chemo at this stage was actually out of the option. It wasn't an option. And that was because I declined it the first time around. And so now chemo was only a last resort. So I was petrified. I was so scared at this stage, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. But the biggest fear that I had was being scared into making a decision. I've already learnt now that the medical system is geared towards fear tactics or scare tactics, that they make you scared with statistics, so you must do these options. And so, therefore, I started to look and ponder and reflect on my life, and I realized just how busy I was. And maybe this was a sign to stop or slow down at the very least. But the funny thing is, only a few weeks earlier, I actually had a moment where I very vividly remember asking to stop. And when I say asking, I don't know who I was asking, but I was just asking for it all to stop. And I didn't mean life, I just meant everything in my life. And I remember I was driving home from a daycare And because I was an essential worker during COVID times, I still had to go to work and I had to wear masks and gloves and all of the PPE. And I was working with children and educators at a daycare for 8 hours that day. And I remember driving home, and on my way home, I got stuck in traffic and I just had all the brake lights in front of me. And I was super hot and stuffy because it was February, and it it was just I just felt so overstimulated and overwhelmed that I let go of the steering wheel. I was stationary. I let go of the steering wheel and threw my hands up in the air and just said, I want it to stop. I just wish it would all stop. And I think it was only 2 weeks after that I got diagnosed. I actually did take 2 mental health days following that day. And those mental health days were very needed. But at the end of those 2 days, I went back the same. So I'm finally at a moment where I have decided to stop. And instead of just stopping work or stopping yoga or stopping seeing people or stopping whatever, I stopped everything. I stopped everything until all I had was eating and sleeping. And so I decided, with my busy mind, with my high achieving, high performance state of being that I was doing at that time, instead of coming out of this slowing down, stopping period of time with a decision on what I was going to do about my life, I would likely take the one thing that I still had, which was eating, and make a recipe book or run all over town trying to find secret ingredients and creating new recipes and stuff like that. So I decided to take that out too. And so for 40 days and 40 nights, don't ask me why, the number, I didn't eat. No food passed my mouth. And even now, I look back on the whole journey, and those 40 days, actually, specifically the first 20 days of the 40 days, were the most life-changing parts of my life. And it was because I stripped back everything that I thought made me me. At the time, I had long, dark hair that came down to my hips, and that was my security blanket. I knew I was that was my identity. Being an OT was my identity. As you can see now, I have short blonde hair. So that's not me anymore. But what if I wasn't an OT? What if I didn't have long brown hair? What if I wasn't a yoga teacher? What if I wasn't like all of these things? And so for those 40 days, I stripped back all of that. And it was hard. It was challenging. Not only was it challenging because I couldn't eat, and that was excruciating, but also I had no energy to do anything but to be. And I hadn't been for 27 years, 29 years at this stage. I had been a human doing this entire time. But now, finally, I was a human being. And so through this, I started to hire my first coaches. And I hired a coach to take me through the fasting journey so that I was doing everything correctly. But I also hired a mentor to help me work out those beliefs, those core beliefs that I'd built as a child that may no longer serve me. Now, I didn't know this is why I was hiring her. I just knew that at this stage, I just needed support. And I had never accepted support before now. Every single other time I'd done it myself. I was a strong, independent woman. I do not need help. I can do everything myself. But now, maybe, maybe I did need some support. Not enough to tell my friends, though. Not enough to tell anyone at work. When I told my boss that I was going to be leaving indefinitely, I was such a big figure in this in their company now. Their company, when I joined them, I was one of 10. Now I was one of 60, and I was one of the big dogs. I was one of the head of all of those 60. And so when they said, what should we tell them? Because they're going to notice you're missing. And I said, nothing. Just let me leave. And if they question it, then just say I've gone on leave. Like, you don't need to tell them anything. And so we just left it like that. I was so scared to leave my clients. I had clients I'd been seeing for over 5 years, and I was their whole world. I was their support. When I called them to let them know that I was leaving the next week, and that would be my last week, there was one family that was on their way on a road trip, and they turned around to come back and say goodbye to me. So we get to this space where I'm meeting this lady on Zoom for the first time. She's a medium. I'm a skeptic. She is also a psychotherapist and what is she? She was a psychotherapist and a counselor. So I hired her because she was a counselor and a psychotherapist. I was very, very science-based. If I couldn't see it, it doesn't exist. And so I'm meeting with her, and she is saying to me, do you mind if I pull a few cards? I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Pulling cards? Okay, sure. Sure, pull some cards. She pulled some cards and made some expressions with her face, and I was numb to it all. It'd been literally 2 days since the diagnosis at this stage. And she said, I'm just going to close my eyes and feel into this for a moment. I hadn't given her anything because I was so skeptic. I was like, this is my name and that's it. That's all you're getting. Because if you're a medium, you should be able to figure out this stuff without me. So she closes her eyes and feels some stuff, and her face instantly changes. And she opens her eyes and looks at me confused. And she goes, something's wrong. I'm just sitting there going, oh yeah, okay, cool. Something's wrong. Yep. That's like literally why I'm here, but whatever. She goes, someone's sick. And I hadn't told her anything yet. And then she zones in on me through the screen and goes, it's you. You're sick, aren't you? But you look so well. It just doesn't make sense. And I pins and needles prickly all over. That was my very, very first ever experience into this new Pandora's box that I was opening. Anyhow, across that next few months, I fasted 40 days. It's not a few months. 40 days is a month and a
Feels
half.
like a month. Yeah, months.
Oh my gosh, it was a long, long time. 20 days of no food and just on water. And then the second 20 days, I introduced juice. And all this time, I still did not cry. That was one of the questions that her name was Ray. Ray asked me. She said, when was the last time you cried? Like, how many times have you cried since the diagnosis? I said, not, I haven't. She said, what about the last diagnosis? I said, no, I don't cry. I'm a strong person. I don't cry. She goes, when was the last time you cried? And I knew straight away I was 12 years old. 12 years old when I last cried. And the situation is so trivial. It is so petty. I was with my childhood best friend, and she said something mean to me, and so I cried. That is literally it. And she didn't like that, I think. And I remember being at the bottom of the playground. She was on the top of the playground, so I could hear everything. And someone said to her, so, Shaunace is crying. Why is Shaunace crying? She goes, oh, she's just a crybaby. And that day on, I was like, no, I'm never going to be a crybaby again. Never going to be a crybaby. And so every other time that where I felt those tears come to the edge of my eyelids, I held them back and they got caught in my throat. And eventually my throat got too full, so they got caught in my chest. And my chest got too full. And the rest is history. But yeah, so we get to the end of the fast. I've learned a lot. Still haven't cried. I know I want to cry. I need to cry. And I've explained it to my husband. I need to cry, but I just can't cry. It's like getting tears from a stone. And I end up having another scan. At this stage, they're trying to talk me into radiation, which seems so beyond scary at the time, and a drug called tamoxifen, which blocks hormones, blocks estrogen specifically because my cancer was estrogen dominant, or estrogen feeds it. So we wanted to block it. But anything felt scary at that time. And I think I was more scared of being seen as a cancer patient than anything else. So, and again, that comes back to that weakness, that being seen as weak when I'm supposed to be strong. And anyway, I get this scan done and I'm in a lot of pain at this stage. I can tell it's grown, but I'm not sure if it's because I've also shrunk and it's just protruding because I've lost so much weight from fasting. But it has grown so big in my chest that I can't wear regular shirts without you seeing a lump underneath the shirt. So luckily it was winter, I could cover it in scarves, and it was also COVID time, so I wasn't really seeing anyone anyway. But it had grown. I knew it had grown, and every day I lived in that fear, and I feel like that fear in itself was helping it grow.
Mm.
And so I went to this scan knowing that it had grown. I was struggling actually to drive because of the pain. I was struggling to sleep on my side because of the pain. I was struggling to take deep breaths because of the pain. And so when these scans came back, as much as I was wishfully thinking that it had shrunk in that time, it had grown. And the scans showed me that it had grown. And so that night was the very first night that I cried. I let go and I just became an absolute mess. And the tears came and came and came. And my husband said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "There is no way I am in any condition to make a decision right now. Let me just be a mess." And it was somewhere in that mess and letting go that the magic happened.
Okay.
Because the very next morning, I woke up and I felt so clear. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I knew that it didn't matter what I chose to do, that it was going to work. And so that day, I called the hospital to book in my radiation, and I started taking tamoxifen. And I knew that it was going to work without a doubt, but I don't know why. And across the next 10 days, the pain halved, and I hadn't started treatment yet. 2 weeks after that, the pain was gone completely, and I could feel the big cone shape lump on my chest was rounding out to a hill.
Okay.
And I was about 10 days into radiation and about 2.5 weeks into tamoxifen, the hormone drug. And so I met with my radiation specialist as like a midway, not a midway, 2 week in check-in. And he asked me, "How are things going?" And I knew that the pain was absent now and that it was physically going down. I could feel it. But I wasn't sure what I was supposed to expect at this point in time because it felt like it'd been a really short time. And so I asked him, "What am I supposed to see at this time? What am I expecting to notice?" And he laughed at me and said, "Nothing. You're only 2 weeks in." And I thought, oh, okay, 2 weeks in. Right. Okay. What am I supposed to see? When am I supposed to see changes? And he said, "Well, if it's effective, um, the earliest in your last week. You have 25 rounds. You have 5 weeks of this. You're only 2 weeks in. Like the changes happen after you finish treatment. I thought, oh, maybe it's the drugs. It has to be the hormone drug. And so I asked him, what about tamoxifen? He said, well, that takes 6 weeks to get into your system before it starts to work. And so that was when I knew that it wasn't the treatment, it was me. And I had the power to heal myself. And it was with that knowledge that I took that power and continued to strip down what I knew to be me until there was just a person with long dark hair. And so I cut that off. I actually donated my hair to cancer. And I continued to believe that I had the power to heal. And 6 months later, actually, not even 6 months later, 5 weeks when I finished my treatment, there was no lump on my chest. You could not see a lump. There was a little bit of redness where it was, but there was no lump. And my 6 month scan showed that there was basically nothing there. So this is when I started my new life, or I started opening up into my new life. During my treatment, while I was getting my radiation done, I received a box. No, I received a workshop. I was asked if I wanted to partake in a workshop that where they put makeup on cancer patients so that if you look good, you feel better. Now, keeping in mind that I was in a I never want to be seen as a cancer patient phase, being in a room full of cancer patients, getting makeup applied felt like the worst possible situation to be in. So I kindly get crossed the box saying no. And then a week later, they sent me the makeup instead, which was really nice. But also, I was starting to become really conscious and aware of what I was putting in and on my body, especially coming out of a fast. I was the purest I could ever be in terms of I had created so much space between the last time I put something in my body to now putting something in my body. I didn't want to put anything in. So I started looking at what was in the ingredients of these products. They were high designer products. They were beautiful $300 foundations from France, like these beautiful $150 moisturizers that had these snakeskin oil and all the things in it. And I looked at the ingredients. There was 12 products. Of the 12 products, 11 of them had carcinogens in them. So the irony of a cancer foundation giving a cancer patient cancer-causing products didn't go past me. They also contained neurotoxins and endocrine disruptors. Endocrine disruptors are hormone disruptors. So I have a hormone-driven cancer, so these also disrupt hormones. So that's when I started looking for a skincare line that didn't have all of these nasties, but still had that beautiful, luxurious feel like the $300 foundation from France. And I came up short. I tried dozens, actually dozens. I would buy them online, I'd buy them at markets, I'd buy them in the shops just to try them out, but they were all missing something. It was like they either missed the fact that it should be doing something. There were no active products in there. It was just lavender and patchouli in a bowl mixed together just so that they can say it's natural, or they were in plastic that wasn't good for the environment, or plain packaging that didn't make me feel special. QV is what they wanted me to use at the hospital, which just made me feel even worse. Like that is the plainest, most dull product you can ever use. You buy it from the chemist in liter tubs. Like, where are the pretty little gold labeled jars that are made of glass with these beautiful serums in them? And so that pretty much was the idea into maybe this is my path. Maybe this is my journey. Maybe this is what I should be doing. And so that's how I began the first of several businesses that I now have. And I called that business 1111 Lab, which 1111 meaning to become conscious and aware of what you're doing, what you're putting on your skin, what's in the bottle, in the products that you're putting on your skin. But it also means that when you see those numbers, you are on the right path. So that's the path that I took. And for the next couple of years, I learnt business. That was my business degree, basically, because I was a health science background. I worked in the health sector and I was a skeptic to anything outside of the realm of science. And here I was dabbling in natural products and starting a business. So for a very long time, I didn't show my face in that business and I tried to sell my products without sharing my story. And it just didn't work. It wasn't until I started sharing my story and people started connecting with the story that they also connected with the products. And now it's an award-winning six-figure business, which is amazing. And it's given me space to start other businesses as well. In terms of my health, for a long time it was doing well. And then after I stopped treatment, I stopped the radiation. I was still doing the tamoxifen, but I didn't, at that stage I was like, it's not the treatment, it's me, right? So I was almost skeptic that the treatment was going to continue to work. And I started to, the fear started to creep in again. And I started getting scared of what if it comes back again? What if, what then? Like it's already been in my bones. How much worse can it be? And that fear, the saying, the what is it? The biggest fear is fear itself. And all of the thought leaders talk about where thought goes, energy flows, what all of that type of thing. And I really do believe that that played a big part in what happened next because every day at a cellular level, my mind was telling me about the cancer coming back and the fear, which, at a science level, it raises cortisol levels, it closes the cells to healing, it turns off rest, digest, and healing, and turns on the survival, fight, flight. Like it doesn't give any other capacity. So it was almost a no-brainer when it came back 2 years later. And this time it was worse than ever before. It had returned in the breast where it originally was, and I do think that it actually never left that spot to begin with, because there was always a residual lump that was under a centimeter. And if it's under a centimeter, it doesn't show up as cancer on the scans, but it's now over a centimeter and it's cancer. So I kind of feel like that one was always there. And then it also returned in my bones in my sternum, but it was now also in my lungs. So we were dealing with several tumors in my body, and prognosis is not good. So from here, this is the first time that I actually gave up. The other times I'd fallen down a hole, but I'd never given up. And I started to think, what's the point? I've fought so hard. What's the point? What's the point of having 1111 Lab if no one's going to run it? What's the point of, having my dog if no one's going to be there to look after it? What's the point of continuing on with any of this if I'm not going to be here? So I ended up calling my mum while I was waiting. I just accepted whatever the doctor told me I needed to do, which at that time he said, you need to get an injection into your tummy so that we can shut down your reproductive system so that we can also give you another couple of drugs to shut down the rest of your hormones so that it won't feed the cancer anymore. We can't really tell you whether or not this is going to work in terms of reducing the tumors, but it will hopefully stop it and keep it stable. So I was in the waiting room ready to get that injection, which was literally across the room from the office that I was just in, and I called my mum to let her know the news. And I dreaded telling my mum because every other time that I've told my mum anything like this, she would not be able to keep it together. She would cry, she would fall apart, and I would be the one supporting her. But I think she could hear it in my voice this time. I think she could hear that note of giving up. And so she said to me that everything is going to be okay. She said that I've done it before, that I just need to pull up my big girl pants, and it's just a little blip that we can get through.
And mum's great.
And that's all I needed, to pull up my big girl pants and go, all right, what are we going to do? Let's go down this journey again. And so that opened up a whole new journey. What haven't I tried before? The first time was denial. Let's just get rid of it and move on. The second time, let's keep it a secret and just not do anything for 40 days and use our mind. Now, what if we did all of it? What if I brought all the troops? I let everyone I know. What if I embraced every element of healing that I can, including allowing support, allowing friends, allowing loved ones? So while I was waiting in that waiting room, I started texting everyone I knew. I texted the people at the dog park. I texted my closest friends, my not so close friends, and I let everyone know that what I was going through. And the love and support that poured in made me sit there bawling my eyes with such love while I was going through something so devastating. So
Yeah.
that week, funnily enough, I was booked to go to Bali with my husband to celebrate 2 years being cancer-free. But of course, that trip was a little bit different. And whilst it felt like a bit of a kick in the guts, it ended up being the best possible thing because we got to go and just get away and just enjoy ourselves and take some time out. We didn't need to make any decisions right now. We could afford a week. It's been this long. A week's not going to make much difference. And so that's what we did. We went over and I Snapchatted my parents 24/7 of every minute of the trip because I knew if they could see that I was fine, then they would be okay. And even still, I'm looking after them. Even still, I'm still being the nurturer. I'm still making sure that everyone else is okay. But we came back from the trip and everything started sinking in, the new reality. My parents live 500 kilometers away from me, and they're a 5 hour drive. And so me being so far away from them adds to their anxiety. So I think I might just go pop down 5 hours away and surprise them. I'll let them know in person, in the flesh, that I'm okay. Now, the reason I tell this part of the story is because this is such a crucial part because everything that could have gone wrong on this trip went wrong, but it needed to for everything that followed to happen. And so On the day that I was going to go, I was going to get a lift with someone. And on the day that we were going to leave, that person let me know that they were sick and they're not going anymore. So that was out. I
Mhm.
thought, all right, that's okay. I've got a car. I'll drive myself. So I decided to drive myself and I broke down halfway. So I'm 2.5 hours into nowhere. And I don't know if you're aware, but in WA, there is not much either side of Perth.
Yeah. WA stands for wait a while, right? So just down
Exactly.
the road's like 200 Ks.
That's right. So I was like the next major town over. My family lived the next major town over. And so 2.5 hours into the trip, there is nothing there. So I'm literally on the side of the road, dead red dirt, bush, bush, nothing else. I'm so lucky I had a patch of signal. So I had organized with my sister-in-law who lived in this town to change uh change family night dinner from Tuesday night to Wednesday night, which is the day that I was going, so that I would be able to surprise them at dinner with everyone there. And so I'm stuck now. I left at 11 a.m. hoping to get there, 5 hours later, just before sundowner, and I'm stuck in the middle of the road. My car won't start. It is hot. There are flies everywhere. And I was stuck on the side of that road for 2 hours. And so I'm still keeping it a secret. I'm still not telling my parents. I want it to be a surprise. I'm on the phone to my husband, my sister-in-law, my brother who's a mechanic, trying to work out how do I get my car to start. I've got my little dog in the car. And so between the two of us, we end up managing to sign up to roadside RAC assist that day so that they would come and tow us. And I got a tow truck to tow me the remaining 2.5 hours to my hometown. By the time I got there, it was dark. It was about 8 o'clock at night, and no one was home. No one was home. I call my sister-in-law saying, "What's happened? Why aren't we doing dinner?" She goes, "Oh, your mum had to take your dad to the airport." I'm like, "What's my dad going to the airport for?" "Oh, he's coming to Perth." Like, oh my gosh. Okay. So then I'm trying to call mum because I can't get into the house and I don't have a car and everywhere in this town is closed and I can't go anywhere. There's no, like, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten since breakfast because I was stuck on the side of the road. And so I'm trying to call my mum to sort of, jig us up. I'm home, but she won't answer. And she later tells me it's because she is driving dad's car at night, which she doesn't like doing. So she saw me calling, but decided not to answer until she got home. So I finally see the car lights coming in, and she pulls in, and she sees me, and I'm hangry. And I'm like, "Mum, get back in the car. We got to go get me some food." And she's too busy being surprised because my surprise actually worked. And she's not looking at me, but she's looking at me. She's not listening to me. And she's walking towards me, going, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" And I said, "Just get in the car. I'll tell you on the way. We need to go before the shop's shut because there's going to be nowhere for me to get food." And she finally works it out and goes, "Oh, okay. Well, let's take your car because I don't like driving dad's car." I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
give me the keys. I'll drive. Let's go." Anyway, so we ended up, it was my battery had blown up, which blew the starter motor, and it was going to take 6 weeks for it to get repaired in Geraldton. But my dad ended up, small town, knowing people. We got it fixed in 2 days. So my 2 day trip ended up being 3 days. So I was only one day behind. So it was all good. So I called my husband to let him know I'm on my way back 3 days later. Um, and he says, "No, no, no, no. Actually, probably best you stay there. I've just tested positive for COVID." And that was the time where you needed the 7 day waiting period. And COVID was the last thing I needed at that time. And so because I had overpacked to Bali, I'd made sure when I came for my 2 day trip that I took one pair of pants and two tops. because that's all I needed. I didn't even bring my laptop. I didn't bring anything other than an overnight bag. And I ended up staying in Geraldton for 9 days. And during those 9 days, I learnt that my parents had been keeping a secret from me. They had been secretly, again, unbeknownst to their vegan daughter, who had been vegan for 7 years, they had been eating a carnivore diet. And so every other time I had visited them, they would stock up on food to feed me. And here I was looking in the fridge, and all there was meat, no veggies, no fruit, no lentils, nothing. And so I was wondering, what is going on here as mum hastily pulls me in the car the next morning to go do a Shaughnessy shop? And I learned over those 9 days that actually they have been eating this completely new diet that they didn't want to tell me, but it has solved all their health issues.
Okay.
So my dad was on blood pressure medication, and my mum had some other things that she was going through, and they had been carnivore for like 8 months or something. And yeah, they're taking no medications. They were feeling better than they'd ever felt before. And I started thinking, maybe there's something in this. Like, I've been vegan since before I had cancer, and I thought it was the most healing diet. Everything that I had read and explored and researched and studied said that vegan or plant-based eating was the most healing diet. But as these 9 days passed, and I had no laptop to, distract myself with working on 1111 Lab, and all I could do was spend time with my family, I started looking at research into what if I just ate meat. And you know what I found? I found that cancer feeds off glucose. This is mostly a common fact, but it's not common enough for people to do something about it. But when you get a PET scan, the way they test for cancer is they actually inject you with glucose and sees where it goes first. Like, that's how you do a PET scan. And so I thought, if that's the case, why am I having glucose in my diet? What if I just take glucose out of my diet completely? And that's when I learned that I'm eating 100% glucose diet by eating a plant-based diet. And so if I take out all of the plants, all of the veggies, all of the lentils, all of everything that I'm currently eating, all I'm left with is meat. Meat, eggs, cheese. That's about it.
Yeah.
Everything else is glucose. If it's not glucose, it's carbs that converts to glucose. If it's not carbs, it's fructose. There's everything converts to glucose other than meat, eggs, and cheese. And so then I started thinking, well, what if I did just eat meat, eggs, and cheese, which was at that time a disgusting thought for a vegan person. But I was ready to explore whatever it is that I needed to do. If there was something that was going to point me in that direction, I was going to do it. So then explored what would happen if I was just going to eat exclusively meat, because if I wasn't getting glucose, then how was I going to get energy to run my body? And so I learned that I would end up using my backup fuel source, which is ketones. And that is based off the fat. So that's basically a keto diet, a ketosis diet. And so I started researching what would happen if I went on a ketosis diet. I'm blocking glucose, so then I'm blocking the number one thing that feeds the cancer. And then ketosis, I learned through my research and studies, was an inhospitable environment for breast cancer. And so there's two things. And I started thinking, what if it's not like this, scary mutation, genetic disease? What if it's just a metabolic disease? What if I just need to find all the pathways that feeds it and blocks it? And like, if I can't do it through food, maybe I can do it through herbs. And if I can't do it through herbs, I'm sure there's some sort of drugs that are already on the market that are low toxicity that people take every day for their own chronic illnesses for their whole lives without issues. Like things like if I wanted to block glucose through a drug, I could take metformin, which is a diabetic drug. It lowers the blood glucose levels. So I started researching this and I compiled a list of foods I could eat that would block all the pathways, a list of herbs I could take that would block pathways, and a list of drugs that I could take that are accessible for chronic illnesses that are not cancer that I could take. And I put that together as a little cocktail plan. And by the time I left to go back to Perth, I had my first fully meat day and my body was salivating. It was ready. It was so ready. And across the next couple of months, I started doctor shopping. I tried to find doctors that would prescribe me these drugs that weren't for cancer. And it was really hard. I got whacked left, right, and center. No one wanted a bar of me until one day I was told from a friend that I was dancing with at a dance class who told me about a book that her nurse practitioner had offered her that had the same values that I was trying to achieve. But when I tried to book in with her, she was so packed out, there was no bookings for her. She didn't even have, like, her name wasn't even on the website because there was just no capacity for her. So I called them up, said, I need to book in with this woman. And they said, she's got no openings. Like the earliest opening is 6 months away. I was like, what about cancellation? She's like, the earliest cancellation list is like 3 months away. I'm like, all right, can I just provide some context? I've got stage 4 breast cancer. I'm planning, I really want to do XYZ. Can you just pass that on? The next day, I got a letter in the letterbox, really weird, didn't have a stamp. It was handwritten. So clearly someone had driven to my house and put it in my letterbox. And it said, please call us. And it was for that clinic. And I called and they said, oh, thank God you called. We forgot to get your phone number. We have an opening for you today. And so I went in that day. She prescribed me everything. And across the next couple of weeks, I started implementing all of these different drugs, the herbs, and I had been on this carnivore diet. Now, we get to the 3-month scan. It's been 3 months since that first diagnosis with the 3 tumors in lungs, bones, and breast. This scan showed me not only did I have 70% reduction in tumor size, but the one in my lungs had gone. Completely gone. And so I knew that I was on the right track. What did I had to lose? So I continued on with that. We do the next scan, smaller again. The next scan, smaller again. We got the 12-month scan back, no evidence of disease whatsoever. No chemo, no hard, what do you call it, oncology drugs. Like we're just using metabolic concepts. So meanwhile, I'm doing all of these other things that really is moving into this mental health coaching side of things, neurolinguistics programming. I'm learning about hypnotherapy. I'm learning about timeline therapy. I'm learning about breath work. And I'm starting to implement all of this into my life and then starting to implement this into what if I take on a client? Like, what if I take what I've learned through my journey and actually do this with a client? And so I started fiddling around with what would be the best possible way to do this and came up with this program and just put it out there with who wants to try it. Like I will, no cost, just to experience it. And I ended up putting it out as a scholarship application so that people would apply to do this because I'd started building a brand by then. I had 1111 Lab. It was by then, it was a 6-figure award-winning business that was doing well. I had created space. And so I had space now to do this other new passion that was coming along, which was helping other people get through this similar journeys. You don't have to go through cancer to have gone through a similar journey. It could have been anything. And so, of the applications, I received 4 applications. 3 of them were like, I could help them. Absolutely. But the fourth one was going to be so freaking challenging. It was someone who had 20 years of therapy already, someone who had severe depression, anxiety, couldn't get out of bed, hadn't worked in a year, um, had so many comorbidities and diagnoses and stuff like that. And she had filled out the application, and at the bottom of the application, the question was, why do you think you should have this program? And her answer was, because I deserve it.
Yeah.
And I just thought, yep, all right. You're the one. You absolutely deserve it. Let's do it. You're going to challenge the absolute crap out of me, but why not use this first experiment as the most challenging one? Why not take on someone that's going to challenge me in every single way when they're not paying me? So that when I do get someone who will be paying me, I have all the confidence in the world. If I can take this person in any way, shape, or form into a better place than where she was when we started, then that would be great. That would be amazing. And so we started on a 7-week journey with her. And I'm going to skip through and just give you the ending because the ending is so incredible. She ended up becoming so in love with her life that she booked not 1, but 2 solo trips around the world, where she spent a month in Central America, then came home, and then spent another 3 months, traveling around Europe. And she is the biggest socialite now. She loves every aspect of her life. She wakes up every single day so excited to be a part of this life. And at the end of that 7 weeks, she sent me a video message with her just tears running down her eyes, saying, "These tears are happy ones." And she's so proud of herself and who she's become, and that she never expected that she could do this in just 7 weeks.
Amazing.
Yes,
Testimonial.
it's
I mean,
incredible.
yeah, and thank you so much for sharing, that journey. I was just I don't know, it didn't want to stop you, you know what I mean? Just listening to the whole experience come out of that. And I mean, there's so many sort of questions, and a lot of it, I guess, is around the identity.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's interesting now you still have the same high performance, highly motivated, and if you didn't have that, potentially you wouldn't have been able to take on the different changes with a bit of serendipity, getting stuck in Geraldton for that time, changing the diet, the
yeah,
letter in the letterbox. But again, when you're on your path, I think things start to just happen. You get luckier, as they say, and people come into your life to support you. But
yeah,
looking back, I mean, up until that age of sort of 27, you were so busy.
yeah.
I felt exhausted. You were just telling me what you were doing with your
I felt
married and
exhausted saying it.
what was the downtime? I mean, did you actually stop at any time, or was it just constant, if there was a bit of downtime, you had the radio on or the TV on? I mean, the psychology just, you were kinesthetic, right? You're just pulling things apart and just doing all the time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the kind of clients that I am attracting at the moment are those who are actually doing really, really well for themselves, but they can't stop to even appreciate the fact that they are. So yeah, there was no downtime. Downtime to me was laziness. Downtime
Wow.
felt guilty. If I stopped for any reason, it was guilt ridden that I needed to get going. And now, yes, I am still that high achiever. I am still that high performer, but the intention behind it is completely different. I don't do it for praise. I don't do it for validation. I don't do it for love. I do it simply because I want to.
And that catalyst now, I mean, I think I've heard you saying you catch yourself. Like what are the symptoms now that you know, hey, I've got to step back and
Mm.
have a mental health day or because obviously that doesn't for people that think, oh, you've got it all together now and everything's going well, seemingly it doesn't stop, right? That agitation, the motivation to keep succeeding just is a drive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. It is a constant cycle where I feel like I've got it figured out, and then I sink into I'm feeling overwhelmed again, I'm feeling overstimulated, but I know what those warning signs look like now, and I know that I just need to clear my next week's schedule, and I just go back to basics. I had it a couple of weeks ago because I've got another business again, which is actually doing really well. It's a VA agency. And I just got overwhelmed with all the things that I needed to do. And so I cleared my schedule for the next week. And I found actually I didn't need to do all that much at all. And it was just built up in my mind. And so I just take that step back and just really slow it down. But now I can be still without the guilt, without the laziness. Like that will never come back anymore.
Because I know you have your 9:30 or your yoga classes, you structure your day better. So obviously that mindset that you've come into harmony
Mhm.
with the head and the heart, because potentially, not grieving at all since the age of 12.
Yeah.
It's interesting being sort of denigrated and then locking that down, saying, right, I'll show no weakness. There'll be
Yeah.
no chinks in my armor. I'll be indestructible. And if you lock yourself in, obviously nothing gets out either.
Yes.
So finding that ability and the healing
Yeah.
factors, and I
Yeah.
see that a lot with people about the people pleasing and wanting to serve and give all the time, but not receive.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
seemingly
Because
you, yeah,
yeah, receiving feels like guilty. You don't feel like you deserve to receive because you should be serving. And we spoke before we started the podcast today that it's interesting that it was all in the chest and the heart, and that is all linked to giving and nurturing. So it never went any further than that. Like it was in the lungs, it was in the sternum, it was in the breast. Like all of that is all nurture based, serving based, giving based. It's not, the neck or the spine or anything like that. So that's always interesting as well.
because I mean, you seemingly, with the family dynamics, obviously you said firstborn, and that's normally the responsibility falls on you, and obviously you don't get put the pressure that you have to do it, but seemingly there was a part of you that decided, hey, I'm going to be this person. I'm going to take this on this mantle.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that it hasn't come off for you. You've got obviously an incredibly supportive partner. I know when you were saying you were crying, it's like men just want to fix things, and how am I supposed to be there for you if so obviously you've got a great partner that
Yeah.
that supports and complements you, and obviously the family as well. So it's interesting that maybe you didn't feel that you had that support network, and like you said, when you opened up and shared with everybody about your experience,
Mhm.
the vulnerability I think is an interesting one when we become very authentic and allowing to be touched. That you can do so much for people, but you don't feel it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all the mind, it's all playing the game, the strategies, the tactics. You would have made an incredibly great general in a battlefield. They're like empathy or compassion, just get shit done, right? But
Yeah.
to come back to this place now where you were giving, and there's no denying that you're a giver,
Mhm.
and yet having this ability now to the knowledge and coming back from your own experience. I mean, it's not necessarily transformation, but transmutation, that you had to
Mm.
go through it and experience your own poison and
Yeah.
drink it and die. And like the phoenix, I thought of you before,
Literally,
you
yes.
rising from the ashes
Several
again and again and
times.
again.
Yes. And even now, like I am in a giving role still. Like I am still a coach. And even in my skincare, like I'm giving women the chance to spend time every single day on themselves by offering them these beautiful, high quality natural products. My VA agency, again, is offering a service to help them build their businesses. And yeah, like you said, I'm a yoga teacher. Again, that's in that giving role, but I have the most beautiful amount of space in my world now. And like I do teach yoga still, but for example, my Wednesday today, I taught two classes, 9:30, 10:30, and then I had a sales call with the VA agency and now this, but I still feel like there was so much space in the day because in between that, I sat out in the sunshine and read my book. I had a coffee this morning, and I've worked out where my productivity is best served. So I work really, really well with my mind first thing in the morning. So I roll out of bed straight into my office and I do a couple of hours of work. And then I generally don't work the rest of the day unless I have a call or a coaching call.
Yeah.
So it's really, really spacious.
I think that's great as an advocate, I guess, in the women's sector, that you're a great leader and a great role model. Not that you'd advocate that the things you've done, that people have to follow that journey to get that level of education, but I think you
Yeah.
can certainly be somebody who can inspire people, and whether you lacking the energy or you're lacking direction, that obviously there's the work. That's what I always see, you're not going to get away with not doing the work, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be laborious.
Mm.
I mean, if when you look at sort of the stigma for some women, and again, sometimes some of them can still be maybe trapped in this ideology that they're the givers, that they're the supporters and the nurturers.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see some of those ideals for women, that they can be high achieving, they can have all the parts of their life that they wish to have? Where
Mm-hmm.
do you see some of the blocks that lie there?
Yeah, so women have a really hard time because for so long women were just the nurturers, just the givers and the service providers. They were the family holders and the homemakers. But then we moved into, but actually they can be just as good as men and they can work just as good as men do and earn just as much as men do. And so instead of women doing that, instead, they did it as well.
Yeah.
And so instead of it being you can do anything, it became you have to do everything. And so no one can do everything,
Yeah.
but you can be or have or do anything. And so I think that's more the side of things. And when it comes to like doing the work, like you said, and how no one needs to go through everything that I went through or this person went through to get this understanding and knowledge. But that's the whole point of getting a coach or a mentor is that you get to fast track that by learning what they've learned without having to go through the trenches, without having to go through the death and rebirth. You can do it by finding someone who is living the life that you want to live and go, teach me how.
They often say the greater the suffering, the greater the learning. So some people need to go through that baptism of fire and pop out the other side. And obviously, your journey is so incredible, and to go through it multiple times,
Oh, yeah.
and to basically, as they say, three's the charm, right? At some point, you did fall down.
Yeah.
Obviously you got through it a number of times until it was just that's it. And I guess that's the dark night of soul, isn't it? Where there is no hope, and
Hmm.
there's no light, and yet mum's words of, hey, come on, you
Just soul mum.
that we do rely so much on our family members to come back to ourselves, because they're the ones who know us best.
Hmm.
So yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting. So do you, as a mindset, you obviously you do a lot of reading. Is there any particular people that you suggest, some good books or some good material, that you're
Mm.
listening to?
Yeah, quite a few, quite a few. I have always loved Untamed by Gwyneth Doyle. Have you
No,
read
I haven't.
hers?
No.
She she just has a lot of she challenges a lot of beliefs, which is really great. So that will always be a favorite of mine. But one my Bible through all of this was actually a book called Radical Remission. And it was written by a woman who was a counselor on the cancer ward. And she found that she was working with people in the cancer ward, and then all of a sudden they just disappear. And she'd look in their notes and it says radical remission. And she would ask the doctors, what does that mean? And they say, oh, it just happens sometimes. They come in, they have cancer, and then sometimes it just goes away, just like radical remission. Like they have no reason for it to be that way. It just happens. And she said, well, why don't you explore that? Like, why don't you see what they've done? Like they probably have done something, it's just not been what you've said that they've done. And they couldn't give her an answer. So she then decided to spend the next year traveling around the world interviewing people who had these radical remissions. And she interviewed over 1,000 people to see what they did. And the stories in that people came off like from the brink of death and then just was able to heal themselves. Like that is, oh, gives me chills. Um, that it was just like there's a story in there about a Japanese man, and he had no idea. He worked himself to the bone and developed cancer from it. You know, the culture in Japan where they just work and work and work, especially as the father figure. And so he was running businesses and he was working 23 hours a day. And in Japan, they don't tell the person when they are sick and they're dying. They only tell the family. And so they didn't inform him that he had cancer. They just said, you know, he's sick. And they told everyone else. But he kind of figured it out because all the other people started visiting him to say their goodbye and pay their respects. And he ended up saying, I want to go home. So he went home and he literally, he couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't do anything. And he just said, I just want to see one more sunset. And so he climbed up on top of the roof of his apartment building and watched that sunset. And every day, I mean, my sunrise. And I just want to watch one more sunrise. And every morning he'd climb up and he'd so effortful, and he'd see sunrise after sunrise after sunrise, and eventually he was able to eat again and then walk again, and yeah, it just chills this story. Mm.
Well, there's often that one if it doesn't, like in the medical profession, if it doesn't make sense, it makes money. So unfortunately, sometimes there's these magical cure. We don't know. It just went away, and so we can't help you, and
Yeah,
so it's yeah. But
yeah. I
what's your
still am very, very much science based, but I'm also just as equally in the spiritual world and in the mental, emotional, all of the things blend together. Our medical system is all about the body and just completely neglects any other component of the body, and the body is not the only thing that's sick. So we used to be body, mind, and soul, but now it's just body, body, body. So we need to bring in all of them together. And like I said before about the stress, how the when you have that fear, that chronic fear, or that chronic stress, your cells close up. They do not have any possible energy left for healing. And so, one of the hardest things that I did during my healing was actually choose to love my cancer. I named my cancer, I talked to it every single day so that I could let those cells open up and be available to heal.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are 80% water, so water has memory, and obviously the vibration of that. And if we use positive, experiences and great food and environmental, then that obviously has a great impact.
Mhm.
Obviously contributes to the healing factor, as long as depending on what everybody chooses to do. Without advocating, there's no one size fits all with mental health or with healing, but
Yeah.
it's
And the
interesting
power of the mind as
to
well.
be open. Yeah, to be
Power
open.
of the mind. I came across a study through it all that was studying the effects of a new chemotherapy drug. And so they had the chemo group, and then they had the group that thought they were getting chemo, but they were getting salty water, saline solution. And what they ended up finding in the results was actually the group that thought they were getting chemo, the one that got the salty water, 30% of that group lost their hair.
Wow. Yeah. The power. Yeah. The
There's
placebo.
no reason for them to
Yeah.
lose their hair. That's how powerful the
Power
mind
of
is.
suggestion. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, yeah, I mean, keep talking. There's so much to unpack, but I really do want to acknowledge you and your journey and just how incredible, like the key you're talking about is the high quality, fulfilling life, which I believe you are living now, and want to be a proponent to share that with others. And I know there is a few great podcasts that you can listen to, and is there any other way that people can connect with you, or if you some books or any materials that you can
Yeah, yeah.
talk
So I
about?
have co-written a book actually called Try and Stop Her, which is 24 women who have put their own stories into this compilation. So it's beautiful. Like they're all business women, but they've all had some sort of adversity that have stopped them from potentially doing what they wanted to do and how they overcame that. And so it's a beautiful book called Try and Stop Her. Um, it's compiled by MG, EMGEE. But otherwise, the best way to get in contact with me if you ever wanted to ask a question or just have a chat is just through my Instagram. My DMs are always open. I am always ready to connect. I love chatting with people. I love talking through what's going on with them. I do have a website, shaunacywest.com.au, where you can look at all of the different things I offer. My 1111 lab is on there, my VA agency is on there, my coaching is on there, my retreats, my yoga if you're in Perth. Even if you're not, we've got Zoom now. It's doable. So yeah, shaunacywest.com.au is the other way. Otherwise, yeah, my DMs are open. Shaunace with an extra E, so SHAUNACEE_West. My actual name doesn't have the extra E, but if I don't put it there, people don't say it. So we do it that way.
Amazing. And the fact that before you wouldn't have opened up and shared anything, and now kind of like you're an open book with
Yeah.
full transparency, and that's amazing that you can bring that knowledge and support to the world. So I do want to thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me hold the mic for a while, but there's
Nice.
always so much to say. I've never worked out how to shorten that version, so you didn't ask me to.
No, it was perfect. Yeah, look, and it's amazing. And I think we're a full collective, and it takes the tribe to raise the children. And I think we are now holding the doors open. The portals are open now for people to start coming through, and more healing and more mental health awareness.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is that low vibrational, especially now with the scarcity and all the fear that's in the world, and where's the hope.
Mhm.
And we all need to do our own work, essentially, to find it. And yet we can ask for help. We
Yeah.
can. There are great books and podcasts and reaching out, and part of that key is to ask for
Yeah.
help, I guess, first and foremost, which
Yeah, 100%. I
but
think what
harder to
you're
learn sometimes for others, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't have accepted help. Well, I definitely didn't accept help for a long time. But now the amount of coaches and mentors I've hired in my time, I can probably count on more than both of my hands. So every single one of them, I've learned something through it. And it seems that every time I hire a coach, they seem to get a little bit more expensive, but the return is always going to be tenfold. It's you start with the little ones and then you work your way up. But I think that what you've got is such an incredible space, like strong, healthy, happy, loved. That's what everyone is striving to be. I mean, I strive to be less strong these days, but happy, healthy,
There's
and
different
loved.
aspects, yeah, they're in balance, in harmony with each other. We can't be all just one and not the other. And like your
Yeah,
client said, to be deserving,
yeah,
to be
yeah,
recognized that everybody has the ability to be loved, to be healthy, to be happy, to be strong in whatever capacity that they
yes.
choose. But it's about choosing, and not a should or a have to or a must.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
100%. No,
Um,
thank you so much for having me on here. I have loved every minute of it, and I know that you're going to do so amazing in this podcast area.
Nice to be in the space being the difference we want to see in the world. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yes.
So I want to thank Shauna C. West. Thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe. Put a comment down below. If you want any more information, please let us know. We'll put a link for Shaunace's information there as well. Until we see you next time, be kind to yourself and others, and much love and kindness. Thanks again, Shaunace. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.